There are so many people that I really should thank for getting us to this moment today. Many of you I'm going to thank privately, so if I don't mention you, it doesn't mean that I've forgotten you. At least that's what I'm saying, so that you can't get mad at me. I really am very appreciative for so many folks. I want to thank maybe first and foremost Coach Heath Robertson, who is the assistant director of Gadoogie at the Cherokee High School. Coach Robertson drives kids to our campus anytime we ask, anytime we have a lecture, anytime there's a football game that we have tickets to. Coach Robertson brings the kids. And Heath, you're genuinely an inspiration to me, and I appreciate you and everything that you do. I also really need to thank our campus's administration. I really want to do that. I want to particularly thank the provost for all of his support and encouragement as Gadoogie has started to grow, and just all of the support that he's given to us. As someone from a matrilineal culture, I also take a great deal of pride in the fact that Gadoogie has grown by leaps and bounds under the leadership of our campus's first female chancellor. I don't think that's an accident. So again, as someone from a matrilineal culture, I thank you for your leadership. I saw both the provost and the chancellor come to the Boundary and meet with our students, and they both came and sat in my high school class and met with my students. We shared pizza at a little dining area in the Comfort Inn on the Boundary with students and grandparents and friends, and it was a real honor and an inspiration to have a chancellor and a provost who would go to the Boundary and would do that. Not all schools have that, so I'm very grateful. As I've thought about the flag, and as I've thought about this ceremony, I keep coming back to the phrase, "for which it stands." I keep circling back to that notion of "for which it stands." And I recognize that that's a phrase from the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, and it's not necessarily associated with the flag that we're here to honor today. But the truth is that we don't pledge allegiance to fabric. We pledge allegiance to shared ideals and to fundamental principles. And against the backdrop of this national conversation that we're having about symbols and how do we honor them and when do we honor them and should we honor them, I keep coming back to this notion of "for which it stands." And I've asked myself what it is that I hope this flag, the flag that symbolizes and represents my people, the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indian, what is it that I hope this flag can come to symbolize on our campus? What is it that I hope this flag in its new permanent home might stand for? And what I've realized is that I want our flag to represent, what I hope our flag will represent, is Gadoogie. And not the program, but the ethic. Programs come and go, but values last. Values are eternal. The Gadoogie were the communal labor organization of the Cherokee Nation. Their job was an incredibly simple and an incredibly sacred one. Their job was to make sure that the needs of the people, all of the people, were met. What that meant in practice was ensuring that the hungry were fed, that the homeless were housed, and the orphan found family. I think in many ways, Gadoogie is best summed up, maybe ironically, in the words of an Irish Catholic politician. Senator Robert Kennedy said, and I quote, "We must recognize the full human equality of all of our people, before God, before the law, and in the councils of government. We must do this not because it is economically advantageous, although it is. We must do this not because the laws of God command it, although they do. Not because people in other lands wish it so. We must do it for the simple and fundamental reason that it is the right thing to do." Gadoogie did not operate out of promises of eternal salvation or out of threats of eternal damnation. Gadoogie succeeded because the Cherokee people decided that it was simply, fundamentally, the right thing to do. White visitors marveled when they visited the nation that they couldn't find any poor people among the Cherokee. And they would write about this, and they would talk about it. And they would talk about how they had looked high and low for the pauper or for the orphan or for the indigent. And they looked to no avail. And of course the reason was because Gadugi had done its job. But perhaps most importantly, the reason is because the Cherokee people had made an absolute commitment to equality and to human dignity. Before the book of Genesis was even written down, the Cherokee people answered the question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" with an emphatic yes. Yes, I am my brother's keeper, and our sisters, and our fathers, and our mothers, and our elders, and our children. And so on seeing this flag flying now in our union, and as you see it and you recall the spirit of the Cherokee people and the values of Gadugi, it is my hope that maybe when we see that flag, we will take just a moment to stop and think about that student on our campus who isn't sure where her next meal is coming from. That we stop and take a moment and think about that mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table looking at their bank book, wondering how on earth they will make that next tuition payment. Perhaps we'll think about the faculty member who day after day after day struggles bravely against the looming shadow of depression, and in doing so becomes a quiet hero to her students and her colleagues. But the spirit of Gadugi requires that we not merely remember. Gadugi demands that we act. It demands that we act in any and every way available to us to alleviate suffering and to lift up. At the risk of being criminally cheesy, Gadugi truly was a community of doers. And I wouldn't blame you at all if you groaned at that. But in this case, it's true. It's actually literally true that Gadugi was a community of doers, I think, in every way that we mean it. And Gadugi also reminds us that our emphasis has to be on more than doing. Action for action's sake is sheer arrogance. Gadugi calls on us to remember the place, the purpose of community. It requires that our actions be driven from a sense of compassion and humility. Gadugi requires that our work come from a deeply held and genuine concern for the least among us, and from a renewed and unwavering commitment to the struggle for equality and justice. And perhaps most importantly, Gadugi demands that we stand fast against allowing our values and our ideals and our principles to become mere slogans. We must not allow community of doers and equality and justice and tolerance to become bumper stickers. The only way our values should ever resemble bumper stickers is that they may occasionally take us into the streets. There's a scripture that is particularly special to the Eastern Cherokee. It's, a matter of fact, the title to the outdoor drama that goes on every summer in the community and has for about 50 years is taken from this scripture. And in it, the psalmist wrote, "I will lift up mine eyes unto these hills, from whence cometh my strength." I will lift up mine eyes unto these hills, from whence cometh my strength. Two different communities located in two different sets of hills. Cherokee High School on the Qualla boundary and Appalachian State University here in Boone. Over the last 5 years, our two communities have challenged each other, strengthened each other, and inspired each other. Together, we have built a partnership that has allowed us to learn from one another by talking to one another. And so, in closing, when you, in the weeks and the months to come, as you walk through and you see our flag, it's my hope that you'll take a moment to remember the Cherokee people, to remember the values, the example, and the inspiration of Gadugi. Let us dare to be those hills that others will look to and draw strength from. Let us dare to be those hills that others will look to and draw both courage and inspiration from. And in these dark times, let us dare to be a bulwark against the darkness. Let's honor Gatugi not by hanging a flag, but by being the change. I'm incredibly grateful that you all wanted to be a part of our ceremony. I can't thank the campus and the community enough for all you've done for our students and for this partnership. And